Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 6th meeting of the Bridge Book Club Projectiology. Tonight we will be discussing chapters 58 and 84, 58 to 84 on the phenomena of projectiology. So continuing on our conversation from the last meeting. First, just a few reminders that we will be recording the first part of the meeting, and then we will stop recording when we have our breakout sessions, where we'll be sharing some of our experiences. And then we'll start recording again when Magali will present the technique for the month, and then close the meeting. So just a few logistics. During the meeting, you can use the raise your hand function in Zoom if you want to say something or ask a question. You can also use the chat function or just simply unmute yourself and start speaking. We will have a live poll in a few minutes, just a few questions that we always like to ask people. So if you can get ready by clicking on the link in the chat there, or scanning the QR code on the screen. We might get the presentation up and then share that, and then there'll be the QR code as well. And while we're doing that, I'd just like to introduce our facilitators for this meeting tonight, Adrian and Kim. Adrian Molieven lives and works in Romania, Eastern Europe, and he majored in and holds a PhD in architecture. He's a lecturer at the Ion Mincu University of Architecture and Urbanism in Bucharest, Romania. He has participated at all of the Conscientiology courses organized in Romania, first held by the International Academy of Consciousness, or IAC, and later by Reaprendentia, as a participant and as a volunteer working as an organizer and translator. He is also the reviewer for the Romanian translation of the book Zephryus. We also have with us tonight Kim McCall. Kim is a consulting anthropologist in the area of Aboriginal land rights. He has studied conscientiology since 1997 and has in the past volunteered with the IAC and the IIPC, the International Institute of Projectiology and Conscientiology. He's the author of Multidimensional Evolution and numerous articles on consciousness and anthropology. So welcome, Adrian and Kim. And before I hand it over to you, we would like to do the brief poll. So if we could ask everyone to click on the link in the poll in the chat or scan the QR code, and we'll bring up the poll. So the first question, I'll just share my screen. Have you had a projection or out-of-body experience in the last month? 4 out of 5 of us, or 5 out of 5 of us, have had some kind of out-of-body experience, whether that be ordinary dreams, lucid dreams, or semi-lucid projections. And 20% of us have had a lucid consciential projection. That's interesting. So let's go to the next question. Have you used the technique of the month? Sorry, I think it skipped over to the third question now. So see if you can answer that. Have you read the chapters? Yep, so 3 out of 5 have been up to date with the reading or have been reading along but are a little bit behind. Let's move on, and I'll hand it over to Adrian and Kim.
We've split the presentation up, so Adrian will start for the first bit, and then I'll do the second part, and we'll take slightly different angles of the way we talk about the chapters.
Okay, hello everyone. I will start today's presentation with a general view of the chapters, because I started reading from the beginning of the chapter 3. And my idea, after reading most of the chapter, was to organize the information a little bit different and see what comes to the surface. And I first started to synthesize the chapters and put some information. I put some information on a few slides, and I will pass rapidly through them. So the chapter 3 regards the phenomena of projectiology, which of course it relates to parapsychic occurrences specific to the scope of projectiology. The idea that I found, I was starting because Waldo is talking about research through all the chapter. I was trying to find the ideas on how to research this kind of phenomena, this part of the phenomena of projectiology. And the main idea that I found that we should keep in mind is that the consciousness is the most complex object in the universe, and the steps that we should take are first of isolating the phenomena, and then recomposition or replacing that phenomena in a wider frame of references, mainly in that idea of consciousness being the most complex object of the universe. And this is because these phenomena are very complex, and they demand simultaneously individual and study as a whole of them, so together in a wider frame of references. So other ideas that are worth bearing in mind during the research is that identification of this phenomena is very hard to do, because many of these phenomena are similar are very similar, and in the way they are triggered, in the occurrences, in characteristics, and they are mixed together, and it's hard to isolate them. And of course, we have to keep an open mind, and we have to always remember that other unrecorded phenomena are still possible to be discovered and researched. So for today, we research okay, this is what I skipped a slide. So what is the object of the research? We should, in all the processes, we should start with the preliminary phenomena, which precedes or prepares or indicates a greater occurrence during the projectiological phenomena. And then we have three different categories. First, the subjective phenomena, which relates our internal projective phenomena. And the big subject of today, ambivalent project phenomena, which are considered external projective phenomena, and have as a main characteristic of them is that they have an important consequences outside the micro universe of the consciousness. And there is another category of phenomena, which is concomitant phenomenon, considered byproduct or collateral phenomena to lucid projection. So these are the main categories that Waldo speaks in the book, and he notes that further we can understand these phenomena by separating them and analyzing them through projectability, intraphysicality, exteriority, intellectuality, personalities, uses, and will. And of course, going back to the unfaceted projective phenomena, there are some characteristics. They occur with the human consciousness, which may or not be projected, occur with the participation of the intraphysical consciousness. The detection can be performed by one or more intraphysical or extraphysical percipients at the same time. Again, we have to remember that there are similar patterns, paradigms, and manifestation to this phenomenon. And they can occur simultaneously, they are mixed together and hard to identify, strictly classify. And this was my personal interpretation of the text, or my critical point of view, was to try to find in the text some characteristics that are common to some of these phenomena, and to highlight these characteristics and those phenomena that are common to that idea. So this is in the book. There are 32 phenomena that are mentioned, but only those highlighted here are analyzed. And the first way I divided this phenomena are by their effects pertaining to the intraphysical or the extraphysical environment. So most of them, which are highlighted here in red, have an effect to the extraphysical environment of the consciousness. And I noted here only 4 of them. They have an effect to the extraphysical environment, and the number 11, extraphysical telepathy and traveling clairvoyance. They are in both categories, because extraphysical telepathy can work with an intraphysical consciousness or with another, or extraphysical consciousness, and also traveling clairvoyance can be related to the physical environment or with the extraphysical environment. Another category was to try to find those phenomena that are related to the soma of the projector, or of another intraphysical consciousness. And I noted here human parateleportation, the human projected psychophony, and bilocation and multilocation. Projected heteroscopy, because it's about looking to another body, another physical body, human or animal. Projective psychography, self-psychonomy, which is of course a phenomenon that uses the body of the projector, and the state of suspended animation. Another category was those of phenomena that they are not in a specific order. It's the way they are arranged is pertaining to order of the information and how I found it in the book. So another category is of those phenomena that are involving partial projections of the intraphysical projector. And I found here exteriorization of motricity, of sensitivity, self-psychonomy, semi-materialization, and traveling clairvoyance. I found another category of phenomena that are involving ectoplasm, and here I had a little bit of questions regarding this phenomena that I marked with a question mark, because I didn't knew if these phenomena are involving ectoplasm or they are definitely involving use of energy, but I didn't know, or the book did not specify if it uses it in the form of ectoplasm or not.
Adrian,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. I think we would want to try something to try to improve the audio of the presentation.
I'm sorry. Again.
No, it's okay. Have you got a mobile phone handy? Would you be able to join the same meeting?
Yes.
On your phone? Use the audio on your phone and the microphone on your phone, and still present through your laptop. Just mute the laptop for audio, though. How's that? Are you okay to try that?
Can you hear me better now?
Much better.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. So I was talking here about those phenomena that are involving the use of ectoplasm. And I was saying that I highlighted here some phenomena, also put a question mark at the end. And this was because I was not sure if these phenomena are involving the use of energy as ectoplasm or not. Another group of phenomena are those involving intraphysical consciousnesses as actors or as spectators, of course, other intraphysical consciousness than the projector. And I've noted here in red the phenomena that I consider and I found information about that are involving other intraphysical consciousness. And here there are there is the other category, possibly involving extraphysical consciousnesses. And here there are also two phenomena that we can found in the previous category. The number 8, extraphysical projective psychophony and extraphysical telepathy, which can involve both intraphysical and extraphysical consciousness. Another kind of phenomena are those involving helpers that can be perceived or not by the projector. Of course, the most important here is the semi-materialization, which, as I understand it, can be performed almost only with the help of a helper. Okay. And another important category that I found is that involving the phenomena involving the expenditure of consciential energies in significant quantities. And here, of course, there are the phenomena that are with the most physical effects in the physical environment. And of course, this kind of phenomena uses significant quantities of consciential energy to produce those effects. Okay, so with this, I conclude my presentation, and I just wanted to add that I think reading the entire chapter, I think this work that I have done here can be transposed in some graphics that link the phenomena in these categories, and there are easily you can easily understand them when you experience them, and this kind of links can be used to better isolate the phenomena, understand it, and then, as I said in the beginning, replace them in the wider frame of references of the phenomena of projectiology. Thank you very much.
All right, I'm just going to share my screen now. So I'm taking, I thought I'd take a slightly different approach this month. And that was that I figured rather than talk through all the phenomena or like we've had in the past, often sort of go through the detail of the book, I'm going to jump onto certain points. So I'm just going to set my timer to keep track of that as well. I'm going to jump onto, I'll just highlight certain points that either just jumped out at me, stood out at me, and I find interesting or particularly valuable, or also I decided to take like a critical approach, right, and identify some issues, points that as a researcher I find unclear or in some way maybe mistaken potentially. So I wanted to perhaps it's kind of a bit of perhaps provide some material for discussion afterwards. So yeah. Oh, sorry, I thought I heard somebody just said something. Yeah, so if people want to, the aim in this in some ways was to create something to debate or discuss afterwards. So talking about bilocation, a fascinating phenomena, right, of a person appearing somewhere in their psychosoma while at the same time being seen somewhere in their physical body. One of the things that I noticed was that the synonym given in the beginning in the list of synonyms that Waldo always gives for things, he has a Tibetan word. And when I looked that up, it actually seems to be, if you look up that title, it seems to be a book of Buddhist lectures rather than a synonym for bilocation. Perhaps bilocation gets discussed in those lectures. But that's something I've noticed in the past, looking up synonyms occasionally and also references throughout projectiology, that they're not always a good match, and it's definitely worth kind of following up and checking them out for detail. Then the other thing that stood out for me was there is a chapter. There's first a chapter on bilocation, and there's the chapter where Waldo compares bilocation with lucid projection. And that whole part for me was, I struggled with that a bit. I thought it would have been perhaps, for me, it would have been better to treat bilocation as a subcategory or a particular form of lucid projection. And just one example, the first distinguishing factor that Waldo uses, that in the lucid projection, there's usually a sense of takeoff, and in bilocation, there isn't. And just looking through Waldo's own book, for example, Projections of Consciousness, there are many, many cases where there is no sense of takeoff. He just becomes conscious somewhere. One thing, plus, I mean, I don't know, we don't have the data. I haven't seen the data of people's awareness when they're bilocating. Maybe there are people that are doing it with full awareness. And then towards the end of the chapter, there's a couple of things. There is the suggestion that bilocation is somehow linked to vampirism. I found that a bit confusing after the whole point. I found it confusing in the context of those sort of examples that I'm aware of people essentially using bilocation to provide positive messages or support or that sort of thing to the other people. So I wasn't quite sure where he was getting at with that. And then he talks about people manifesting in the bodies of animals while they're in bilocation, and he speaks about that as pathological. And from an anthropological perspective, there are many cultures where sort of idea of shape-shifting, which I tend to attribute to something like bilocation. So people manifest as some kind of animal, and it's a cultural experience. It's not a phenomenon, it's a deliberate action. So that was just seems to me of being an example of cultural bias. And I'm just trying to work out how to switch the, yeah. Okay, I'm just do it here, fair enough. So the discussion of traveling clairvoyance was interesting. You know, there's a lot of, obviously in all of these, clearly I'm pointing out certain things, right? There's a lot of, you know, very interesting and useful data. But one of the things that I just didn't sit right for me, and I'd be interested on people's takes afterwards, is that Waldo makes a distinction between traveling clairvoyance and remote viewing, where he basically says remote viewing is to traveling clairvoyance as dreams are to lucid projections. And that doesn't, the data doesn't really sit with that, because remote viewing, I mean, for me, they're the same, right? The way they're described are the same. People that do remote viewing do what other people call traveling clairvoyance. So I found that confusing, that discussion. Waldo also suggests that traveling clairvoyance essentially only gives access to the tropospheric dimension. Again, I don't think the data supports that. I found interesting reading his account that the Monroe Institute, they have done a lot of experiments with what they call projections or out-of-body experiences, but they're actually examples of traveling clairvoyance where people are lying somewhere and they're reporting back what they're seeing. But they do report from all kinds of different dimensions and not just the tropospheric dimensions. And then what I also found interesting at the very end of the discussion, Waldo suggests that traveling clairvoyance actually involves a series of rapid projections. And that kind of seemed to go against this entire discussion up to that point. So again, I wasn't quite sure where he lands in the end, or whether there's a mix of different phenomena. One thing that I found interesting reading these phenomena, before we started, Magali made a good point when we were chatting before, how dealing with phenomena is really, like, I find the study of phenomena really helpful, because it reminds me of how much more there is to consciousness and our experience. So it helps you kind of go beyond our physical conditioning. But on the other hand, there's a lot of phenomena described here that I've never experienced personally. And so with the disbelief principle, there is definitely this aspect of don't believe in anything. And I noticed certain experiences. So for example, with the ectoplasm, there is the example of the whole body. So Waldo talks about, in an extreme case, there's a whole body projection. So the entire body essentially dematerializes into ectoplasm and then rematerializes. And that makes sense of a lot of these phenomena that just get described in physical mediumship, where a medium is tied up and in a room, and then when they come out of the seance, they're somewhere else, right, in a different position. But it's not something I've ever witnessed, seen. And then the same with the semi-materialization, which seems to be entirely based on Waldo's own experiences, these phenomena where he's creating it's essentially almost like a seance by yourself with your extra-physical helper who materializes through your own energies. And I just noticed that I read it, it's interesting, but it has a very different resonance to experiences that I can say, yep, I've had that and I relate to it. Suspended animation is a really fascinating and quite long chapter. One thing I found interesting for people who've seen the Surviving Death documentary, there is or perhaps no other stories, in the Surviving Death documentary from Netflix, there is a story of a near-death experience where a person had drowned and was underwater for 30 minutes and then came back and revived, and it seemed miraculous. Waldo's explanation of how we can spontaneously enter into the state of suspended animation in cold water provided a good explanation for that. I thought that was really interesting. And there are some other really interesting discussions there about drug-induced suspended animation, how that gets used in, he refers to the voodoo religions of Haiti. So these chapters, exteriorization of motricity and sensitivity, I remember those chapters, struggling with them way back when I first read Projectiology in the 90s. And I still really can't relate fully to these accounts. The exteriorization of motricity to me sounds essentially like energetic exteriorization. So I'm not quite, I don't know if there's anything more to it than that, the exteriorization of energy. And the chapter about exteriorization of sensitivity has this description about energy being projected and materializing in a red and blue pole that Waldo says are positive and negative. And that suggests, I mean, it kind of opens a Pandora's box of what does it mean and how does it relate to us and our life and our energy bodies. And I'm not aware that he ever discusses that anywhere else, or so that those chapters kind of, I don't know, they feel like they could have, certainly that one in particular could have really been fleshed out. I found them very unclear. The false arrival chapter, so the sense of, or the sounds of somebody arriving, you can feel them, you can hear them, they're even knocking on the door and so on, before they arrive. It's kind of like announcing their arrival. So Waldo's suggestion is that this is essentially confined to Nordic countries, although he says it can happen elsewhere. But I've only experienced it once, and that was in Brazil. You know, it was hot, so that concept of cold, which potentially is a factor, was given as a factor, certainly didn't apply. Just a few little thoughts that came up: projective heteroscopy, seeing you know, through our bodies or someone else's body, as if by X-ray vision when we're out of the body. I think there's, when I see Aboriginal X-ray art, and if you Google Aboriginal X-ray art, you'll see what that looks like. That's, I assume that is the cause, right? This experience. There's quite a lot of Aboriginal art that seems to be inspired by out-of-body experiences, including the sort of aerial visions of the landscape and so on. Physical multi-location. This is an interesting point that, so under that chapter, Waldo makes the point as a given that consciousness is always situated in one place, right? So it can't be you're either in the body or out of the body. It's in the psychosoma, it's in a location. There aren't multiple, it doesn't multiply and be in multiple places. And it's an interesting question because there are definitely, you know, belief systems or other ideas, philosophies that think that evolved consciousnesses can be in some way in multiple locations. And so I've curious, right? What is the basis for this premise? What is the proof for this? How do we know that this is actually a fact? I feel it's something that'd be worth exploring further. The chapter of projective pneumatophony, essentially an extra-physically created voice box using ectoplasm or Bent's energy. I found that interesting just because I hadn't really looked at physical mediumship until quite recently, and that's one of the often reported phenomena that there's these booming voices that come out of the middle of the room and through a voice box, right? And so that explains this sort of phenomena. Under the farewell projection, Waldo talks about the silver cord, that the silver cord is doubtless a factor. So the farewell projection, a person dying or dead already, they've just deactivated their body, and they come and say goodbye to a loved one in their psychosoma. And so again, there's these little, just a couple of paragraphs. The silver cord is doubtless a key factor, and that the experience often happens when the cord is rupturing or just after. So the last part of the statement, in a way, goes without saying, given that the person is in the process of dying. But I was intrigued. What does this mean? The silver cord is a factor. Are we talking about the energies? Are we saying the hollow chakra is a factor in the capacity of the conscient just turned consciex being able to manifest themselves to someone else? I thought it was ambiguous, that statement. And then there are two chapters, one on projective psychophony and one on human projective psychophony. And I actually did not understand the difference between those two categories, why there were two categories. And then there are 9 examples of physical sensations felt by the projector when in the other body. So in the projective psychophony, the projector is essentially acting like a consciex and temporarily possessing conscient. And so I suppose it makes sense that there would be these different sensations. But I was intrigued. He gives examples of you know, a young woman feeling like a young woman, or an old weak man, or so on. Yeah, I was just curious, why giving those examples? Are these things that he's experienced? Are these, has he done that, projectively possessed another person? It seemed like an interesting selection of examples that one would feel, and I guess also some more context. Yeah, some more context would have been nice. Extra physical projective psychophony again is in this category where it makes a lot of sense to me. You know, there's from the logic of the holosoma and how the bodies interact with each other, but I have not experienced it, so it's one of those to be further considered in the further considered basket. Same would apply for extraphysical telekinesis. I've not I've no recollection of experimenting with that. And Waldo shares a story of that he was practicing extraphysical telekinesis, or PK psychokinesis. So trying to manipulate material objects while extraphysically projected, and that there was a picture frame that broke. But it was ambiguous to me whether he wasn't really saying he made it fall, and it might have been implied. I wished for reading it now, I wished for sort of a greater discussion of the challenges about it, how he went about it, what does it look like in practice, right? So human parateleportation, the capacity of the phenomena, which is kind of like a projection of the whole body in a sense, right? The whole body dematerializing in one area and then rematerializing somewhere else. It's a topic I've researched a bit and written about on my blog, because I've had stories. There's quite a few stories about that here in Australia among Aboriginal people. And what is interesting is that the Aboriginal data kind of doesn't really match with some of the parameters that Waldo set, which includes that these experiences usually involve amnesia, that there is no lucidity during the process, before the process, or during, or control over destination. So a person, and I think the examples he has of Mirabelli in the book of the Brazilian medium Mirabelli involve him disappearing at a train station and reappearing somewhere else, and it seems kind of random. And he has stories of people that find themselves in bad situations, right? They teleported into spaces where they shouldn't have been, so they were arrested and so on. The stories that Aboriginal people talk about are very deliberate, of leaving a place and being somewhere else where they are meant to go incredibly rapidly. And one person who was describing the experience to me talked about lucidity the whole way through, and he was moving around as if, he was able to move through walls and so on, as if projected, but he was very adamant that it was his whole body. Okay. And and then towards the end, there is a kind of a chapter about generally parapsychic development and the different phenomena that can come around, the different sort of levels of experiences from the smaller to the bigger. And I thought that made some really interesting points. The importance of changing things up. So I'm totally paraphrasing, of course, but the importance of changing things up if our parapsychic development stagnates for extended periods, right? So he basically says, if you keep getting the same results and you keep trying the same thing and nothing changes and this goes on for years, then you're really stagnating, and it's important to try different angles, change things around. And this is often why we talk about, with the different projective techniques, there is such a variety, because at different stages in our lives, different approaches will work better than at other times. But it also made me kind of reflect on that statement, on my own trajectory, with having probably the most intense a period of phenomena of all these different types as we're discussing here, a long time ago, when I first got involved in Conscientiology. So before that, and then that's how I got involved in Conscientiology and Projectiology, to understand these things better. And how over the last 20 years, if anything, there's probably less of those phenomena. But at the same time, perhaps what seems more like a greater energetic balance and control, I suppose. So it's an interesting reflection of what that means, right? Because then he concludes the section that we're discussing here with a statement that it's really important to develop our consciousness through these kinds of experiences, not essentially leaving it for tomorrow. And it's kind of a little message, I guess, to people, or the way he phrases it right in the chapter, to people who are really focused on their physical life and want to leave the experience of consciousness for later, that it's part of evolution, exploring and understanding and broadening our experiential range is really important. So it was a good reflection to end this section of phenomena with. And that also ends my discussion. So that should give us plenty of time for group discussion, I hope.
Yeah. So, King, really good. You came sharp here today. Huh? That is a big debate. And one thing is that you instigate a debate here, because you brought each peculiarity that you could reach with your eyes, because we know that there is many other good things there, but you pinch the things that you really have doubt about and that you haven't experienced, and that you could find also mistakes. That is a good reader. I have to tell you, I'm grateful that you bring something different, because then we can actually look. So I wish we could, you know, come up in your slides and could discuss, have more a debate of each of those things, if any of us that have read had the same experience. So it's really interesting. I had in some parts of the books, I had some doubts of my own, because it was things that I don't know, that's strange for me, but I haven't done what you did, that is just stopping the part that is it doesn't it's not clear for me, and put apart and say, what is that right or not? So question myself, and so be a really critical reader. I think you're bringing this example of how to be a really critical reader, and that instigate. I was here like, oh, oh, that one, that is good, but you know, our memory just would be nice to have a debate of points, and maybe you inspire me to just take notes of things that I find strange, because
also,
actually I come to the good things of the book, because there is many things that we could discuss here that in these chapters was really good. And you brought all the things that is speaking, you know, like
a little bit of nitpicking.
Yeah, and it's, you are being a critical reader. You're showing this part of being the critical and bring what is that about? Good. I
was just going to say quickly that the forum as well, associated with the book club, is a great place to put those things, and then perhaps other people can share experiences as well. You know, like there's some things where I have an experience and I can describe, or other people have had experiences and they can describe, that could flesh out our understandings, even though we haven't had our own experience on everything. In some instances, it could be interesting to get a broader, you know, view of people's opinions about certain things which Kim hasn't experienced or wasn't, you know, not sure whatever about. Yeah, just as an idea.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be good to have more group data, right? Collective, for sure. Yeah.
I also want to say about Adrian, just a comment here, because you both were different today. And Adrian, I like in the beginning it was hard to hear you and to understand, but after you put in the phone, I really like your format of analyze the chapters now, as you did a totally different analysis of how you see this whole phenomena, and how you separate, and gave at least for me, gave a different view of the whole phenomena thing. Really good.
Yes, if I may add one idea that I was my idea was to try to further understand the information, and I was thinking like this. Let's find if for example I am good with using ectoplasm, for example, what can I do with that, and which are the phenomena that are related to the use of ectoplasm, you know? And if I have all of them in mind, for example, during one experience, I can easily choose what to do to have an overview of the possibilities, you know, but the possibilities just using ectoplasm or just using my energies in a specific way. Or how can I interact with the physical environment? Which phenomena I can use? So I have all the list in my mind, and I can choose what to try or what to do. Or this was my idea of rearranging the information like this.
Yeah, I think it provides a really good basis to create well, it's like a scientific categories, right? And to and then, like you say, give them practical application.
There is one thing I'd like to comment about the reading that I saw. I don't remember right now where, but I was talking to the guys before we started that Professor Waldo, he put in the, like, he does a crescendo of projection of your body, then the bilocation, then teletransportation, is that para-teletransportation, and then eruption of psychosoma. And like Kim was saying, I couldn't experience the other three. I just experienced a lucid projection. So then it's a kind of, how do you know, it's not a common thing to have bilocation. I haven't heard anyone close to me that had a bilocation. So then it starts to be a little further than me. So just the researchers or research about that could bring some clarity about that. But I just want to bring this point here.
Yeah, the only one I know of was actually Waldo himself, when he talked about how he was walking down the street in New York with friends, and then he was across the other side of the road, seeing himself walking down the street. And that was the sort of the big story on that one that he used to talk about. But again, yeah, other people's experiences are other people's experiences, and for ourselves, it's challenges to be accepted and investigated, right?
So what would that have been, do you think, Jeff? Because that would be, if he's walking down the street, he can't be, at least by his definition, projected, because he's conscious. He's otherwise he would be falling over. His body. How can he be conscious?
Yeah, I don't think it's against his understanding of projections. I think it was a sample. He thought of it as a condition of bilocation, and he also talked a little bit around that story, talking about like the robotization, or the way the body can just carry on and didn't need the consciousness in there for that just to carry on doing that, which was kind of interesting as well. I think the phenomena could be so complex and lots of different variables and possibilities that, classifying them is great, but yeah, I agree. There's undoubtedly more, and there's undoubtedly nuances and so on, that with a greater base of experiential knowledge and shared experiences, that it would be an interesting project for someone to dig into. That was an interesting one, yeah. And the same thing, it was also reminded me of the one with the dog, like when he connected with the dog and was trying to control the dog's behavior and movements and so on, and had some success, and then lost the dog. The car came past and the dog wanted to chase after the car and start barking, and the dog's will was stronger than Waldo's, as he was trying to control the dog, and he lost the influence over the dog. So yeah, it's interesting.
I was going to ask you, Adrian, with one of your categories. There's a couple of questions I had about your categories, but you talked about the projective psychophony under related to soma. I guess, okay, I guess you're thinking, oh, because I was thinking the projectile cacophony is where the extra-physical consciousness talks through the psychosoma. Is this where the psychosoma of the projector talks through another human being? Is that the soma connection?
Yes, this was the idea. Extra-physical projective psychophony, yes?
Yes.
Okay, just a moment so I can find the related to soma. Ah, okay. Extra-physical, I had a reason about, so can I share the screen a little bit? I don't know if, okay, share. So you are talking about this, you can see the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you are talking about this slide related to the
Yes.
soma, and you think that this should be...
No, sorry, I actually thought maybe I no, maybe I misread actually. I thought you had, oh no, here we go, 15, human projective psychophony. So that is that the, if you go back to the other slide.
Okay. To the other one.
The first one you had with the soma, relating to the soma.
Okay, just a moment. So, no.
Because I think you might have just answered, actually looking at your slides now answers my question that I had on,
this one. Yeah.
On my slide. So you've got human projective psychophony as related to soma.
Yeah, so in the book, there are 3 chapters here. One is projective psychophony, human projective psychophony, and extra-physical projective psychophony. And projective psychophony is just it encompasses both other 2.
It's the broad concept. Yeah.
Yes, it says here, it's chapter 75 in the book. It says here that categories, thus by definition, there are 2 categories of projective psychophony: human projective psychophony and extra-physical projective psychophony.
Yeah, and so that, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that actually clarifies one of my issues, which was relating to not reading it properly, actually. So there's the difference between the 2 psychophony chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm curious about if any one of us here had, because we have lots of phenomena here. If and they are more advanced phenomena or more difficult ones, that is more not a common ones. So I'd like to know if any one of you have already, had any of these phenomena.
Any of them?
Sorry.
Flavio, please go ahead, my friend.
Okay. It's a pleasure to be here talking about the book Projectiology, and my congratulations to Adrian and Kim for your research and presentation. And when I was thinking during the presentation, and I have some phenomena like extraphysical contact with consciousness that have the shape of your psychosoma changed by zoantropy, and it's a very interesting thing. And I have contact with conscious with the psychosoma by the black bull or a dinosaur in the extraphysical dimension. And then I was with the helpers, and I feel confident during this situation, and then sterilize my energies, and the things are better. And the other thing, extraphysical phenomena related to the projection conscience is the sterilization for ectoplasmic effects and for help to first the soma from conscience. And I already have this experience. It's during the project. And I sterilize energies with intensity, and it help the conscience to pass for the first the soma. And it's a experience that I had with this phenomenon related to projectiology.
Well, the one that stands out for me is the false arrival. I had that actually at the IIPC when it was back in Ipanema. And one of the other volunteers, I was sitting at my desk, whatever, and then suddenly I was like, I could feel, I turned around, I thought she was right behind me. And it was like I could feel her energies against my body as if, and then 5 minutes later, she walked through the door. So that was the most tangible example that I can think of the false arrival.
I had one with the exteriorization of sensitivity. I think it fits within that definition. I was lying in my bed and started to have an extremely intense flow of energies into my head. And it was actually a number of things combined, but what actually happened was literally a video started playing in my mind. I could see there was, you know, human figures, and it was a very clever mashup of different musical styles. It was a music video kind of a thing, of guys really happy at work, dancing around the workplace, so that was that thing, and then there was very much contextualized in my life, and the chorus was like, you know, just to share a bit more information, the chorus was like, don't sack your workers. And I'd just been made the manager at that time of a really difficult guy. And so it was very much completely aligned with the context and what was going on in my physical life. But I was lying in the bed and that energy was happening, and my legs started moving. But I thought it was my legs, like the density and the pattern and the tingling and the movement, the sensation, it really felt, I thought my legs were moving, but they actually, I later perceived it wasn't actually my legs, it was my psychosoma that had been pushed out of alignment, and I was feeling the shape of the psychosoma really clearly, but very much still in a very close proximity to the physical body. So it was a kind of an odd experience in that regard, but very, very interesting.
So is that, Jeff, is that what you consider the exteriorization or sensitivity? Is like a partial exteriorization of the psychosoma?
I think when I read the definition, that's what it does make sense to me. So yeah, that's how I interpret it. That's what I understand. Yeah, when I was reading the definition, I remember that experience. I thought, oh yeah, that seems to be close to that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that I certainly relate to that as an experience. The sort of not the don't sack your workers part, but the
yeah, don't take your workers, and the dudes fucking dancing around the office and the workshop and stuff. It was very cool. It was very cool. It was a mashup of like I enjoy rap, I enjoy reggae, sorry, and other sort of pop music and stuff, and even classical. But it was a mashup, a really intelligently done mashup of all the different musical styles that I really like, put to music with the video choreographed. And I was like going, when it stopped, I was just like lying in my bed and I literally applauded and just said, that was just incredible, guys. So yeah, it was very cool.
Anyone else to comment? Or we can discuss slowly what King have brought. I have some doubts about what King was bringing, but if anyone wants to you know, have any question, anything.
I have a funny one about the false arrival. One Sunday I was preparing lunch, and instead of preparing lunch for a couple, somehow I knew that someone was coming, and I prepared a big lunch. And a couple of friends, they had trouble, and they end up arriving like surprise in our place during lunchtime. And then I said, okay, now you have to have lunch here because everything is ready, you know. So somehow I felt the energy coming and I decided to prepare lunch for everyone. Yeah, and regarding the by location, there is a famous story of a medium, a known medium in Brazil, Chico Xavier, the one that Waldo Vieira worked for 10 years. And they say that there was an event that he was like signing his books, many people in this event, and someone was giving trouble in this event, and he appeared in the kilometers away in the police station to tell the policeman to come to that specific place. And there were many witnesses because it was a big event, and he was famous because of his psychography work. And then when the police arrived, they said, oh, how come you were there and you are here? You know, because it was like kilometers away. So this story is very well known by the spiritists in Brazil.
And there's one as well, another one around, like, which I think is probably relatively common, like the extra physical telepathy. I mean, there's a large number of instances where that has occurred, and you know, for me that seems relatively common. I would have thought. I'd be curious to see if other people would express the same idea or not, confirm or deny from their experiences.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's very true. It's kind of a standard part almost, right, of having a lucid projection.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Margaret, go ahead.
No, because I had this kind of telepathy with a lucid projection. So I had this projection that is how do we call? We read about that I touch my own body, and also I had this clear. I was awake like I'm now, and I could see my body, I could touch and everything. And also I had lucid projections where I could have the telepathy with the person not talking, and I understood all what the person was telling, and it's something that I already had. Yeah.
I have experience with telepathy when I was projected, and I received a penta request out of the body, and the extraphysical consciousness gave me a paper and with a penta request. And after that, when I returned to my body, I confirmed that this real name of consciousness in a difficult situation. And I received this out of the body. It's the first penta request, a para request experience.
That's great. Adrian, this discussion is just making me wonder, think of whether there's some other way of creating a category that of how common or uncommon an experience is, you know, how, because I get the sense that there is kind of a body of experience where a lot of people can go, yep, you know, and then there's other experiences that are like, oh, wow, you know, that's kind of in another, I don't know.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
It's not actually what I noted there. I think it was the most common traits of this phenomena, you know. But of course, I haven't thought about common or uncommon. But of course, it could be a very interesting categorization and see where the line is between common and uncommon, you know. Of course, it's not a straight line, but yeah.
You had some questions, Magali, I think, didn't you? Or?
Oh, no, I want to go back to your discussion if we have time here, as I think we are in a small group today, and we are not going to do break rooms, right, Michiko? That's right. So we can maybe discuss some things, because yeah, in the presentation you brought a lot of information that you gathered, and maybe it was a little quick, you know, but I don't know if you want to bring one or two that we could discuss. People that have read the book already can discuss, and that you think that is more interesting for us to discuss here.
I'm just having a look right at the
Kim, do you think you could share your presentation again?
I can, yep.
Would you be able to?
There is something about bilocation that you said. It's about
yep.
so here.
Where's my presentation? Oh.
That is the part that was, you know, zoanthropic, vampirism. You said something about vampirism there. Yeah. So bilocation has lots of things, but I'm reading here from the chapter, no? Vampirism, many cases of ill bilocators or even inexperienced projectors can be classified as being authentic instances of vampirism. Well-known facts exist through the folklore reports of the citizens of many countries. I realized that when I read that, when there is here a report of citizens of many countries, I actually, when I read a book and I see something like that, I give credit for the author, you know, because if I know that he's a good researcher, like Professor Waldo, and I have seen many of, so I give the credit. That's why I haven't stopped here and say, how is this many countries, many, you know, many reports about that.
Folkloric records, you know, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I might be especially picky, right? Because essentially in my job, I get paid to be picky. You know, I analyze people's reports. I go down rabbit holes if they're referencing in a legal context. And I did that when I researched for my parateleportation paper. I was at the CAEC and I went to the library and I went and got all the references that Waldo has for parateleportation in his book, because I thought that would be a great starting point. And what I found at the time was that, you know, they weren't always on the mark, right? They didn't all the references didn't line up with teleportation or didn't make very convincing points or whatever. And I can't remember the detail now, but I do remember at the time thinking, oh, I have to take a bit more, you know, be a bit more forensic in relying on this work. And it makes sense, right? Like in a sense, well, it makes partial sense. I can understand if people are sick and, you know, miserable and scared of death. I think that's what he's saying, right? In that category, people are like ill and they're like longing to see other people somehow for support, and they, you know, this longing makes them latch onto them and vampirize essentially, right? Draw their energy. That context makes sense, but I don't know, bilocation. I've just been doing research recently on this in near death and the near death experience context, and there's some very well documented cases of people appearing from, well, actually this is on their deathbed or as they're getting better and letting them know they'll be all right, right? So they're having these but they're usually, I mean, those cases at least are motivated by a desire to communicate and reassure the other party.
So Kim, I read this a little bit differently, that I don't think the author in this case was saying that bilocation is somehow linked to vampirism. I think that he was just saying that for the cases of ill bilocators, that vampirism was involved in this phenomenon. But I didn't read it as he was necessarily saying that bilocation is in general linked to vampirism. Yeah. That was my read on it. I don't know what does everyone else think?
Yeah, I think makes more sense if someone is sick, because in other circumstances, I don't see a link between bilocation or vampirism. I don't know. Because vampirism looks like something negative, you know, something not good, and bilocation can be a good thing, you know. The case I mentioned that happened to Chico Xavier. So he just wanted to fix a problem and he called the police, you know. So it wasn't, I don't see vampirism in this case.
I mean, he does, like
Yeah,
Michiko said, he does confine it, right? He defines it here as many cases of sick bilocators who are sick or inexperienced projectors, although that's yeah. So I don't know, it'd be interesting, you know. I have a list there's an extensive bibliography under that chapter. I think the biggest out of all the chapters here, and I'm definitely keen to work my way through that.
I'm just seeing as well, like I started searching the rest of the book for references, for example, to zoanthropy. There's even a whole chapter on that later on in the book, 324. And I guess the interesting thing is, like, reading one chapter in isolation, yeah, you get that, and you're right to criticize, because I think nothing will improve without criticism, and this book's not sacred. Like, you know, it's to be criticized and improved and worked on, and you know, and you will find errors that can happen throughout the process, from the researcher to someone who's doing copy setting to writing to reviewing. Stuff happens.
The translation as well.
Yeah, translation.
Some things get lost in translation.
Yep. So, but it's interesting to take those points and drill into them and see, okay, because, you know, every author, they're writing from a point of view, aren't they? They're, you know, like, it's not the truth of the universe. It's it's a set of ideas based on experiences and interpretations a lot of the time. And okay, interpretations are open to obviously past experience, personal experiences, and so on. They influence all of those. And then it's like, okay, well, how can things be better? And I agree, like the translation could be better, the understanding of that thing from a broader context and different points of view, and seeing, oh, where's the author coming from with that one? Sometimes helps. So, because it was interesting going through zoanthropy and seeing, well, where is the thing about zoanthropy and pathological, and he talks much more about, like, well, he talks a bit about I saw a lot about like the lico something, so the stuff like with wolves, or lipo, or whatever the name is, I can't remember. But they talk about wolves and how in Europe, there's a lot of that. And then he talks about the heterohypnosis from intruders related to this kind of stuff as well, when you don't have a strong enough willpower, and you're having your psychosoma transfigured from intruders and this kinds of stuff as well. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff in there to dig into.
Yes, one thing here is like there's certain things, like many cases. We know that there is not much cases of bilocators today. At least we are not studying how many cases are there. So yeah, there is an bilocators. So if we want to be picky here, like well-known facts exist through the folklore reports. So folklore reports, maybe I haven't seen any folklore reports of bilocation. But I mean, that is analyzing in another way. That is a book that studies, this part study phenomena. So I haven't been going through all these books, I know that you, King, you have a little bit more of history in phenomena. But for those that I tend to, as a reader, just go through that, because I cannot confirm or disclassify this situation, So that's why I tend to just let it go, because...
Yeah. And you should be able to rely. I mean, you'd think you would rely. I mean, Waldo was a solid researcher, and he's done all that work, right? We shouldn't all have to go and do the work over again. That would kind of almost defeat the purpose of the book, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Any other one that you want guys to discuss? We have 4 minutes, so maybe
I would be interested in this. This one. I don't know if people who've read the book now who can remember, but that, I don't know, I was just kind of that thing about the positive and negative poles in the when we're kind of the red and the blue kind of how do you describe it, like they form like columns and unite, and I don't know, it left me I suppose I can't relate to it, right? I couldn't relate to it, but it did sound like something that if it was a thing, right, it'll be worthy of a lot more exploration. So I don't know if anybody here can relate to it or knows anything more about it. That would be interesting.
I'm just trying to find the exact reference in the book as well. And
yeah, I remember that one, and I also like passed by this, but I want to get back.
Was it that one, Kim, that I just copied from the book? Or was it the sensitivity?
Anyone knows the page, Kim?
It's the point about the poles. I'm trying to find the page that the mention of the positive and negative poles is mentioned on specific.
Okay.
Anyone knows the page, so we can go to the page?
Yes,
Can even...
it's 182.
82. Thank you, Adrian. We can even put this page on the screen. Oh, but that's
there you go.
We could share this page. 182.
Yeah, I can't talk to that either. I didn't see red or blue stuff in my experience. I didn't see it. I felt more like of a, and maybe it's just an interpretation of the experience when my legs were in this, you know, disconnected condition. I was feeling them so strongly around the psychosoma, the perception of the psychosoma in the hollow chakra. I didn't see red or blue stuff. I had an idea more of just the intensity and the vibration and the tingling was super strong, but I was also getting my head completely blasted with energy at that time, and I felt like my teeth were going to explode and stuff as well. So I was, you know, trying to pay attention to a few other things. But the blue and the red stuff, yeah, it's because it's such a precise definition or explanation of obviously I would imagine his own personal experience in this instance, that yeah, I'll just have an open mind for the future and see if we can have another one of my own which sort of exposes that. But what do other people think about it?
I suppose, you know, I'm curious about the implications of this idea of polarization. That I feel that invites a whole other, I don't know, it's a whole other layers of significance, if that is, you know, an aspect of the hollow chakra.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, what's it to do with like the energosoma, the hollow chakra, formation of the silver cord? You know, like what's happening there? Yeah, it's an interesting thing, definitely.
Yeah, there is a guy, I don't know if you heard about him. His name is Joe Dispenza, and he does some scientific research related to energy, and he mentions about the poles we have in our body. So there might be a link between this information if the research he has, but I never try to link both, but he mentions a lot about this polarization of the body.
Silvana, do you know if this man, if Joe Dispenza, whether he actually publishes any of his research? Is that something?
Yeah, there is a very he has many books, and he has also like documentaries explaining. I can send you a book, one of his books name.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I know I've looked at some of his stuff, but I find with the stuff that I've seen, he talks a lot about research, but the things he says are actually more like generic personal help type things, supposedly based on research. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, well, you can always
data that would be interesting.
Yeah, you can always do your own research and see what he can add, you know. But I think his work is quite interesting.
And I wonder on that one, Kevin, about the blue and the red nebulous columns, and then in a paragraph or two down, he talks about like the positive and negative charges of things, and he talks again about polarization of things and so on. So I'm wondering if the blue and the red represent different charges, or I don't know. Just
I think that's what he's saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then they reunite. You know, the sort of.
Interesting.
There are also some accounts of this phenomena in the Eastern medicine or the practitioners of martial arts, where when someone who works very much with energy is able to polarize into two charges the energy, and when you touch him, it's an electric arc that is discharged. So this can be found documented. I think you can find even on YouTube some small footage documenting this kind of phenomena, and I think that this speaks about the possibility of the energy being polarized into positive and negative charges. And normally it's just energy, but it can be polarized, and upon contact, an electrical arc is formed. So I think it's interesting. I remember this, and I looked it up a few years ago. Yeah.
So we don't have much time more. Actually, we are already in our time. I hope we could discuss each of these points. Kim, it was really good. Thank you to bring this critical reading for us, and as an example of how we can be more attentive and more picking our reading, and understand more the type of reading we are, each of us, and be more conscious about how we see things and how we work with the books. So first of all, thank you very much, Adrian, King. I felt that we needed more time, and I lost a little bit of Adrian's presentation, but what I got was really good. Thank you very much, guys, to be here with us. And I'm gonna put here in the chat, we are gonna have the next, oh, sorry, it's not this one. We are gonna, our next project technique will be projective posture technique, that is in the page 440. And we invite everyone to our next meeting that will be next Saturday, or the third Saturday of the next month, with Daria Zvek and Simone Musida. Daria is here. Sorry, Daria, if I couldn't get well your name, but it's Zvek. And we hope it will be about altered state of consciousness. So we are changing our theme. So thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
everyone.
much.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
guys.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.